everyone. Thank you so much for coming today. We know that there are a lot of other sessions that are great that are going on at the same time, so we really appreciate you being here. Today we will be discussing specific events and experiences that can lead to student success, as well as strategies to help tackle common obstacles and barriers that can impede success for our CCM students. When thinking of a student's educational journey, the educational piece is usually the component that is focused on the most. But unfortunately, in today's world, there are many obstacles, pressures, and responsibilities that can prevent students from succeeding in a college environment. And we will discuss what those factors are in just a few minutes. Since internal and external factors outside of the classroom can impede and can prevent success for our students and the success rate in college, it is important to be mindful of interacting with students differently than in the past. The holistic, comprehensive approach really encourages faculty and staff to be cognizant of other hidden factors that can impede and possibly hinder the student's success. And that is why the 8 Dimensions of Wellness is so valuable. The 8 Dimensions of Wellness is an evidence-based model developed by SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Administration. SAMHSA states after much research that if anyone is lacking in any of these 8 dimensions, then they are not reaching their full potential of wellness, and the student's overall health and wellness can be dramatically reduced. And as you can see from this chart, we have occupational wellness with Michael Scott, financial, environmental, emotional, intellectual, physical, social, and spiritual. And we'll discuss a little bit more what these pieces represent in just a few. Together, this panel is comprised of a variety of roles. And even though we all play different roles, we all share the same challenges when facing our CCM students. We have Professor James Hart, chairperson of Languages and ESL, Don Phelps, Associate Director of Campus Life, Sherry Ventura, Coordinator of Distance Learning, myself, Ariella Panic, counselor from the counseling office, and we are also very lucky to have a student perspective, Andrea Doucette. Andrea Doucette has used all of the resources that we will be discussing today. She actually just won the first year Student Leader Award at the Campus Life Appreciation Dinner. She is the secretary for the Cybersecurity Club, and she was also the president pro tempore for the Student Government Association. She has taken 2 hybrid classes in an online course and has utilized services from the Office of Counseling and Student Success. So we will be discussing, each of us, the strategies that we utilize when working with our students in our prospective areas. Then we will identify the 3 main themes that come across when we work our students. We will be talking about ideas, findings, and our personal experiences pertaining to each. Lastly, we will conclude with a question-answer segment. We will begin first with Professor James Hart.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here. So, so basically, I'll begin by saying a couple of things about what I'll be speaking with you regarding the panel today. So basically, I'll be talking about what faculty's role is in the supporting of student success with respect to this holistic approach. And I'll be hitting on 3 main points throughout my discussion. We're going to be doing introductions here first. I'll pass it along to Don in just a minute, right? So the first thing is to establish, first of all, I'll talk about how to establish good ties with students, then how to reframe your authority, because sometimes even though we have the authority in the classroom, how we exercise our authority is really important. It can have a huge impact on how students respond to us, and therefore that has a very huge impact on their success in our course and at college in general. And then I'll be talking about how we can maybe not take on the role of a counselor, but can acknowledge some of the things that are going on in their lives and learn how to refer them out to where they can get some help.
Hi, my name is Andrea Doucette, and it was my first year here at CCM. I'm a computer science major, and I attended Roxbury High School, so about 5 to 10 minutes away from here. And today I'm just going to be sharing some of the strategies and techniques that I found the most successful for me this past year. Okay. So one of the first things that I found most helpful to me was just getting involved outside the classroom. I kind of made the mistake of getting a little bit too involved my first semester, and it was really hectic and stressful, but I really did take a lot from that. I met a lot of new people, and I think just getting engaged outside the classroom really does help. And I find that when professors actually encourage that engagement outside the classroom, that really helps and impacts a lot of the students as well. Also, when professors are just very enthusiastic about their students and the success that their students have as well, it's also really important. I've talked to a lot of my fellow classmates and friends, and they find that to be very beneficial as well. Another thing that I know I've struggled with and some of the other students is Blackboard. And I took a college student success course my first semester here, and it was really hard to navigate through the Blackboard. And compared to my other class that I took Foundations of Information Security, and the setup was a little bit different. So if there's any piece of advice that I could give to any professors, it would be to make Blackboard very simple and easy to navigate through, because I would sit there for a couple of minutes trying to find where my assignments were, and when it's easy to navigate, it's a lot easier. Also, my first semester here, there were a lot of ups and downs, and I think for me, what helped me get over these hurdles and everything was when professors are just open and willing to give advice and everything. I actually had reached out to a couple of my professors, and Dawn and Ariella, when I was going through some hard times, and it really is reassuring when you have someone in your campus that you can go to and ask for advice. And I think that when professors are they enforce that with their students to know that they are there, just not for the education aspect, but also just for advice. Anything that the students may be going through personally, it really does help a lot and impact a lot of students. So.
Thank you, Andrew. And I'm Don Phelps. I'm the Associate Director of Campus Life. And in Campus Life, we do co-curricular, extracurricular activities for the campus. We have over 50 clubs and organizations. We have over 200 student leaders, and they put on over 80 special events every year. We have various clubs. We have governance clubs, like a Student Government Association. We have award-winning media, Youngtown Edition. We have Promethean, which is our literary magazine. We have special interest groups, like the Green Student League, which is an environmental club, K-Straight Alliance. We have recreational clubs that are just for fun, table tennis. We have chess club, those type of things. Of course, we have religious organizations and cultural organizations. And then we have our co-curricular clubs, which a lot of the faculty members, you have clubs that are associated with your departments as well that can, add to what's happening in the classrooms. So the student leaders, they attend hundreds of hours of workshops and conferences, both on campus and off campus. So I help them with that and, interact and, kind of see how they do with that training and that experience. Some of it I do myself. I get to work with the student leaders, both on the management of their volunteers, because all our clubs are fully volunteer, so there's a lot of managing of volunteers that go on, and of course the event planning piece as well. And I hear about a lot of issues. Some students I'm meeting with once or twice a semester. Some students I see 2 or 3 times a week. There's even a couple I see 2 or 3 times a day. So they're in, and we talk about obviously the meetings and the clubs and stuff like that, but then we also talk about what's happening in their lives and on campus and stuff like that. So again, making that personal contact with them, you can really be there. And Andrea as an example, she got involved in student government right away, and we talked, and you could start to sense that something was going on. We talked about it, and everything worked out great. But you have to have that personal contact in order to be that. So that would be one suggestion I have. As far as getting involved, the students are going to come to campus, they're going to go to class and go home. So we try to encourage them to do more, to get engaged on the campus. Because as you can see, if they're engaged, they're more likely to be successful in school. So that's real important. And of course, that ties into retention because we want them to stay here. You know, I have some student leaders that, you know, will extend their education here because they're so comfortable and love it here and be involved, and we kind of have to push them out the door at the end. But, you know, we look at that as a good thing that they want to stay here so much. And then some of the benefits of being involved during new student orientation, I'll talk to the new students as they come in, some of the skills they gain in interpersonal skills, management styles, financial experience, team building, and of course time management skills. What I find is that the students really are able to do much more. They become much more efficient when they get involved, and we teach them the time management skills, and they can, you know, they're amazed at what they can get done, you know, once we give them the skills to take on more and more. Of course, they can't major in campus life, and you learn that lesson. You know, so we work through that as well. You know, but this way they can balance, you know, their schoolwork, their stuff at home. Everyone has a job, and then, you know, if there's time left after that, they can be involved. And you know, there's some tough decisions we have to make on where students need to step back from being involved because it shouldn't be their number one priority. It shouldn't even be in the top 5 priorities. If there's time, great. If there's not, step aside, and you can always jump back in later. And I have one more point I wanted to make. Oh, some of the things that they do when they, I'll tell them during new student orientation and throughout the workshops and stuff like that, is they're going to gain skills they can use not only here at CCM, but throughout their life. You know, I always tell them, you know, you're going to get a great education here. You're probably going to have worked while you're here, but so are your peers. So one of the ways you can separate yourself is being involved. It'll give you lots of stories to talk about to an admissions counselor at a 4-year school, or when you go on the next job interview. You know, if you put on a program, there's going to be challenges. You know, there's the whole financial piece, you know, working with the college bureaucracy to get bills paid. All those stories will give them something to talk about instead of, oh, I just had a job while I was in camp, you know, while I was going to school, that kind of thing. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Carrie Ventura, and I'm the coordinator of distance learning here. I've been here 12 years, which has gone in a blink of an eye. But one of the things I can say is how much distance learning has continued to grow. And I know you've all experienced it in teaching online or hybrid classes. But probably the biggest area we've seen a change is in supplements. You know, now, as you know, every course has a Blackboard shell available to it, which means in any semester there could potentially be 7,000 students utilizing Blackboard if everybody did it, plus. So there's a lot of things and a lot of information that's available to them, and one of the things that I know we all struggle with is we give it to them, but they don't necessarily read it. In terms of best practices, my website is loaded with information, and if there's anything you take out of today, I really hope you'll just spend a few minutes clicking around. As recent as yesterday, I sat in a meeting and listened to a team that worked all year to make recommendations on how to improve student retention in online classes and success. One was to send a targeted email to every enrolled student. I do that. They get it. They get a link. They get a link to the online readiness tool, which I won't go into today. You'll hear more about that tomorrow in the session on the CSS course. But you know, they get that. There is another recommendation was to do a video. There's a 2.5-minute video that I did. It's intentionally only 2 minutes long. You know, we lose them. My daughter was a student here, and she cracked up. She's like, "Mom, your face is on the webpage." I'm like, "And did you listen to what I said to you?" But again, you know, the tools are there. You know, there's the student guide to distance learning for those students that need something tangibly. It's a PDF file that I update every year, and you know, and the beauty of being able to do things on the fly, I make sure links are changing and are updated, and that pertinent information is there. So I encourage faculty as a way to really help your assistants, you know, steal whatever you want from that, put it on your page so that they see it there as well as on my page. The reason the Blackboard login button is on my page is to get students used to going there and to look at that. And that was a very conscious decision we made back when we went through the web page gyration change a couple of years ago. So that students, you know, although they can bypass it, we really encourage them not to do that. Andrea couldn't have said it better, and I swear we didn't talk beforehand, but about this piece. But every semester, I do a technology survey that goes out to every online and hybrid student. I email that from distance learning to them, and it's a survey that really highlights the different tools that they use in their experience and gives them a voice in what frustrates you, what would you like to see different. And I can say to you, every semester I've done it, which has been at least 6 now, course navigation is the biggest complaint. Students cannot find things, and as we all know, you get frustrated when you log in and you start to do something. What happens? You shut down, you go away, you don't come back right away, you're just like stressed. So, that's something I really encourage you to, work with the CTE if you're not sure with Shelley about the most effective way. There's recommendations that she gives, and there's a reason for those. Students really do find that to be a stressor that they're facing immediately, the first day of class when they go and they log in. Browser issues also silly remain to be an issue. Internet Explorer has gone away. Don't use it. We tell them all the time. They still, when they fill out the survey, say, what are they using Internet Explorer? They wonder why the test crashes, why things don't show up, whatever. So I just share that with you as well as an issue that comes up. But if I can just make one suggestion, as I said, supplements have taken off. It's wonderful. Students get exposed, not necessarily for the first time in an online or hybrid class, which I think is a good thing. That's going to give them success when they decide to do that. If you could take 5 minutes at the beginning of the semester and show them that page, show them what it's all about, because I get, and the help desk gets, numerous calls from students who said, my professor said go in and find the slides and do this and do that, and I'm in WebAdvisor and it's nowhere. You're right, and you're not going to find it in WebAdvisor. So, that in terms of being successful, that's something, especially for using as a supplement. I know we're crunched for time and material, but 5 minutes really could make the difference in the frustration and have them start right. I mean, I sound like the marketing department, but start right as opposed to being frustrated. So those are just some of the observations that I would share as well.
Okay. I'd like to start by sharing some statistics with you that are very powerful. This was a study done in 2015 spring semester, and I'm actually going to read it out loud because I think it's that impacting. 74,000 students were surveyed. 86% said they felt overwhelmed. 65% felt they were very depressed or sad. 60% felt very lonely. And 57% felt that they were anxious. And actually, there are recent studies done that anxiety has surpassed depression and is now the chief complaint when students come into the counseling office. Another study was done earlier, and some of the challenges were sleep difficulties, family and friends responsibilities, stress, depression, anxiety disorders, and some of these cause depression. So grade problems, that affects intellectual and occupational wellness. From the 8 dimensions we spoke about before, loneliness, that's the emotional piece. We have monetary problems, that's the financial piece. Relationship problems, now that's social, but that can also be environmental, because if the student is living with somebody, whether it be a spouse or a parent, that could impede them from a cohesive learning environment. And then we have hopelessness. Hopelessness is not only the emotional component, but it can also be related to the spiritual dimension as well. Spirituality isn't just about the religious denomination, it's about finding meaning in life. So a lot of times when people feel hopeless, they don't have that meaning. And earlier we mentioned sleeping, so that affects the physical dimension. So I just mentioned all 8, and all of these things can affect the success rate when it comes to our students. Those are the 8 dimensions again. So pertaining to my office, the counseling office, all of the counselors there are licensed, so we are equipped to handle anything that may come in. We work with students on a personal basis to help foster a climate of hope and success, whether it means tackling their anxiety or their test anxiety, or it means understanding who they are and the goals that they would like to meet in school. Educational goals. I cannot tell you how many students are on academic probation, and the first question I ask is, do you study? They say no. Seriously, 30 minutes. They study 30 minutes a day of the exam. So we work with them so that they can understand, okay, how about 30 minutes every day until that exam? And that's still not enough for the week, but it's something. And they notice that their grades improve. We also work with students when it comes to career exploration. 80% of students will change their major at least once. The average is 1 to 3 times. So if the students are not engaged in the course material, they're most likely not going to have that intrinsic motivation, and they're not going to do well. They're here because mom and dad want them to be here. So we work with them in helping them find what their specific goals are. And then finally, acclimation. There are so many students here who they come to the first year orientations, but they may not listen. It's a lot of information, they may be overwhelmed. So we help them understand what the resources are, that they can talk to their professors, that they can reach out to my office. Honestly, most of them think you all bite. We tell them you don't, but they are afraid that they're going to look, in their words, stupid, and they're not going to come and talk to you. So we assist them in finding those skills and initiating that conversation, which leads me to our first theme, and it is lack of coping skills. So for today's conversation, we will be focusing on the main population that we see at CCM, although we work with many, the traditional aged students. Now, they overlap between 2 different generations. We have the millennials, Generation Y, which is about the end of 70s, early 80s to mid 90s. And then we also have Generation Z, which is the mid 90s to about 2009-ish. So for today's purpose, we will be focusing on the latter part of Generation Y and the earlier part of Generation Z. And we found this fun chart just to kind of share with you. And it depicts the different cultures pertaining to different generations. Here we go. So we thought the music piece would be the most entertaining. I don't know if you can read this, but the Builders, also known as the traditionalists, the 1920s to the 1940s, they liked Frank Sinatra, jazz music. The baby boomers, the 40s to the 60s, Elvis, Rolling Stones, Beatles. And then you have Generation X, which is about the 60s to the 70s, and you have Madonna and Nirvana, and then we kind of go a little downhill, and we have Generation Y, where you have Puff Daddy and Britney Spears, and then Generation Z, where you have Kanye West and Taylor Swift. So this is just a little bit of an example. If you want the link, I can give it to you. It talks to you about a lot of different things besides music and those changes. But essentially, due to the generational shift, we found that this population lacks the coping skills to help them thrive. They are more stimulated by electronics. They are technology dependent. They have a different value set. They're into social media and texting, anything to delay that face-to-face contact. They like texts and emails that are quick, straight to the point. So if you ever got an email from a student that says, "I need homework, TY," we think that, we think that that's disrespectful, but in all reality, they don't understand. They were not taught those strategies. In addition, many students don't know how to communicate with each other because they don't have to take responsibility or accountability for what they post. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, anything like that. Even with texting, "Oh, I didn't mean that." You know, they don't need to really own up to anything. So they don't know how to interact with you, like I said before. They don't know how to initiate, not even with you, but with each other. And that's why the loneliness is high up there. They don't know how to engage. We see that students not only need to be electronically stimulated, they always need to have answers because they have a phone in their hand almost all the time. Right, Andrew? What do you say? Yes, and so they can get the answers, they can get that immediate access, that immediate gratification. With that comes that sense of egocentrism. Well, I need to know, why didn't my professor get back to me in 2 minutes? Like, I sent that email out, I don't get it. And then with that egocentrism, that comes that entitlement. In addition, this is the generation that with any sport activity or event gets a participation trophy. In addition to that, we have sometimes overly involved parents who deprive their students of rallying for themselves. So they don't understand what it's like to take responsibility when they come to college because they never had to do that before. So right now, we are going to be discussing how we can assist them in obtaining those coping strategies to help them thrive in the college setting.
Children of the Gen X's and more
No, we're left.
Okay, now that we've had, thank you, Gabriella, very much. That was very enlightening on the millennials. And for the record, I did see a student in one of my classes wearing a Nirvana shirt a couple of weeks ago, so they still have some of them still have some taste. So what I'll be talking about is, so my piece will, like I said before, will be the faculty's opinion, and I'm going to be talking from my experience only in dealing with students who are coping with a lot of major issues in their lives, and what the faculty's role can be in supporting students through this. The big challenge that faculty have when dealing with students and the issues that may be bringing into the classroom from the outside is, how can we be supportive of our students while at the same time holding them accountable for the work that we need to hold them accountable for, right? I think a lot of students, when they go through something in their personal lives and they come to us to talk to us about it, unfortunately we can't just say, oh, we're so sorry, don't worry about that paper you have to write, I know you're going through a hard time, or so sorry, don't worry about the final exam, which is, I think, sometimes some of the things that they expect. They don't understand that our role is, they really don't understand that our role is to establish a standard for them, and then we need to hold them up to that standard. So, a couple of things that I think help with easing and navigating those difficult conversations, empathizing with students, but at the same time holding them accountable for the work that we need to hold them accountable for, is a good communication. Okay, so it's the first expectation I think that faculty should have of themselves. We should not be expected to be counselors. As we see, we have a wonderful counseling department with licensed counselors to which we can refer students when they're dealing with personal issues outside of the classroom. I don't think any time during this conversation today that we're implying that faculty should be counselors to students. However, what we can say, and I think we should expect ourselves to be, is good communicators with our students. And I'm going to talk about a couple of ways I think that we could be good communicators with our students. And the first is, first of all, I want to go back to something that Ariella has said, to frame this first expectation, which is good communication skills, in a generation that is so stuck on technology and cell phones for mediating communication. Opening up and establishing strong relational ties with our students is extraordinarily powerful. For nothing else, then we're modeling good behavior for our students, right? So when we go and approach students and we talk to them, we open up a conversation, we ask them what's going on, how can we help you, right? We're taking them out of that cell phone, we're taking their faces away from those cell phones, we're saying this is how you deal with a problem in real life. You approach somebody and you begin a conversation so you can start to work it out. So I think I want to address that. Okay, go ahead, Sherry.
I just want to add a point too, and that works great when you see students. But in a distance learning class, you'll never lay eyes on them in most instances. And again, there's a lot of ways to look at how you can best engage them. There's awesome tools out there, and it's things through discussion and online office hours, and just making yourself available for that hour or two in the evening when a lot of our students are finally home from working all day or from other classes or whatever. But that these things that we're mentioning really can transfer to a distance learning student too, and it's hard sometimes to think out of the box like that because we do tend to think more traditionally like, oh, they'll just come and see me when they have a problem, which we know they don't. They're afraid of you. I know you're nice people too, but again, I think it's important for us to keep that piece in mind and just want to emphasize that as well, because I do get a lot of questions from students when they go, well, how am I going to see them? How am I going to get a hold of them? How am I going to, that fear. And we want to reassure them that you are going to be in touch with them, and you're going to notice if there's somebody, you have tools that say they've logged in, they haven't logged in. Somebody isn't actively engaged. Sometimes it's taking a different approach to make sure that happens. So
thank you, Sherry. Thank you, absolutely. And also, I wanted to address something that Andrew had said at the beginning. I think the idea of opening up communication with students is very powerful. We have a good example of that here. And you said that when a professor opened up to her, I mean, that provided the avenue through which she could, begin to address and deal with some things that she was going on in life. And she really appreciated that of her faculty. And this is an example of how beneficial it can be to students. I wanted to address that as well.
And I just wanted to add, I think that establishing an environment for the students is really important, and opening up about, your personal life and what previous jobs you had before, it kind of engages the students, because we want to hear about your lives. We want to hear about, what you've done in your past. I know my math professor, Professor Fitzpatrick, she actually worked on Wall Street, and I thought that was just so interesting how she worked on Wall Street, and I want to hear about her experiences, and then maybe that would open up another conversation with us. So I think that it's really important to shed light upon yourself as well.
Thank you. So in my opinion, there are some strategies that faculty can use to increase and improve their communication with students. And the first is really paying attention to body language. I think we're so focused on the spoken word with our students that we forget to acknowledge their body language and how much it can inform us of maybe a problem, maybe something that they're feeling. We can gather a lot from the attitudes they have by the body language they exude in our classrooms, eye contact, posture, those kinds of things. Students whose body language indicates that they're disengaging from the classroom, maybe they're not saying anything, but the body language that they are using are telling us that maybe we need to take them aside one day and ask them what's going on, or maybe at least prepare ourselves for something that may happen down the road, a hard conversation we may have to have with a student around midterm time or around the finals time, saying, we're getting to the end of the semester, I've noticed this, this, and this. I don't see you being very responsive. What is going on? Is there anything I can do to help you? So these kinds of things, I think, are ways that we can pay attention to our students to pick up maybe body language that we may not be aware of, because we're not so much aware. We understand body language at more of an instinctual level than we do at a conscious level. And I think making ourselves more aware of it is very important. Not just on the part of the students. I think that faculty really also need to be aware of their own body language and how it may either encourage students to come and talk to them or discourage students to come and talk to them. And that's even harder to do because you can't remove yourself from yourself and look at what you're doing, but just pay attention to how you're standing. Are your arms crossed? Those are stances that push people away, or do you exude more of a casual body language, maybe not during a lecture, but during a break or at the beginning of class or at the end of class, something like that. I think faculty really need to start to become a little bit aware of the body language they have, as well as their students' body language. I can't stress this enough. I mean, it's really helped me a lot. Now, the danger with body language is that I think it can be dangerous. We have to understand that we cannot come to quick conclusions about our students based on the body language they exude, because just like maybe we're unaware of the body language that we exude sometimes is being putting students off, sometimes students exude body language that can be interpreted as disrespectful or aggressive, and they don't know that they're doing that. I remember I was teaching a course, and a student, every time I spoke to this one student, she would roll her eyes. And it happened so much that I finally came to the conclusion, I don't think she really understands how disrespectful she's being to me, because at every word I say to her, she's rolling her eyes at me. And it was very easy for me to come to a snap judgment on her and retort, discipline, chastise, scold, based off of the fact this girl was constantly rolling her eyes at me. But instead of coming to that snap conclusion, I gave it a little bit of time. I think we need to continually remind ourselves that we are dealing with 18, 19, 20-year-olds. No disrespect, men or anything like that. But there is not a lot of life experience that an 18 or 19 or 20-year-old has that professors have being a little older than that. But I think after I gave it some time with this girl, I kind of noticed the behavior, made some observations and some mental notes, and after a while, I just pulled her aside and I explained to her, I said, I'm noticing this behavior. do you realize that you do this every time I talk to you? And she said no. She didn't realize it. And I said, well, I maybe know you don't mean that, but when you roll your eyes like that, everything I say, it comes off as very disrespectful, and it has the potential to really shut down a conversation. Now, it hasn't with me because I'm acknowledging and addressing and recognizing it, but out there in life with somebody else at a different institution or at a different place, that could lead to a very unpleasant situation for you. And I think we came to some kind of conclusion after that. It really worked out really nicely. Also, with communication, I think it's really important to engage students in a way that encourages them to take ownership of themselves. So when students come to us with problems they're having with our courses or with their lives in general, I think what's very helpful is maybe not helping them solve the problem right then and there, but at least helping them take ownership of the decisions they're making. The most common thing I can think of is students who work. So when students are not doing well on tests, and we have the conversation, are you studying, etc. Some of the things that I ask too are, how often do you work? And a lot of times the students say, I work 40 hours a week, 35 hours a week. And so that opens up the conversation of, well, why did you make that decision? Right? Why are you working 30, 45 hours a week and going to school full time? Clearly this is not working for you. You're getting these grades, for in my class, you're getting these grades in your other classes. Can you come to some kind of, at the very least, what I try to do is listen, of course, always, but always respond respectfully, but also in a way that gets them to think about what they're doing and the choices that they're making. Because I think a lot of students feel, regardless of whether they're aware of it or not, they feel like they don't have control. At the very least, what we can help them understand is that they actually have control. It always amazes me that when students turn in an exam after they're done with it, they say, oh, I hope I get a good grade. I said, well, you actually have control over that. You actually have, it's not rolling the dice. And so helping students see that they actually have control and that you're a partner with them in that. You can help them study, give them some advice, take their questions, receive them during your office hours, stay a few minutes after class. I think that also helps them understand that they can make choices, and you're there in a supporting role, but always it's. I'm not saying we're doing it for the students, but we can be we can support them in that way. Right? This is your decision. These are your requirements that you have to fulfill. I can help support you in that, but this is ultimately on you.
And I just want to add on what Professor Hart said. Establishing that communication is so important for our office too, because we do see a lot of students that are single parents that are working full time and going to school full time, and we can sit down with them and establish an educational plan, focus on them study strategies, test taking strategies, figuring out what your goals are and what objectives and interventions need to be done in order for you to meet your goals. And we can't, over, about 8,000 students, we can't initiate that and go to the students, but if you see a student, you're reading the nonverbal language or see something, you can always refer them to us. Because a lot of times we see students when it's too late. And what I mean by that is we're doing intervention techniques rather than preventative techniques. I can't tell you how many students that we saw in the last 2 weeks that came in with panic attacks because they weren't adequately prepared for their exams, or they were, and they overstudied and were just completely emotionally, mentally exhausted. So helping us work with them by reaching out to them and reaching out to us can really assist everyone involved to help them possibly not have that, what they call nervous breakdown at the end of the semester.
Yeah, I want to, sorry.
Can I add something?
Of course, yeah, go right ahead.
Pam Fro, Director of the EOF. The work that you guys are talking about is obviously the work that we constantly do in the EOF because of the population and working with, succeeding with first generation college students. So we not only deal with, coping strategies, but also techniques on how to fight these things from the very beginning, from the moment that they enter college. To the point of Professor Hart that I really want to bring home is, I'm involved right now in a lot of research that I'm doing on the interactions between faculty and students. the amount, the power, how powerful the connection between your students and you in the classroom, believe it or not, have such a huge impact on their success, and this is research-based, that good and bad, the decisions and the interaction between a faculty member and a student can literally make or break a student. I have had students in my office coming in doing all coping strategies that EOF is telling them to do, and the faculty member shut them down. And the student shuts down with them. And at that point, then what you're gonna do is, at this point, you need to fix the problem. But to flip it on the other side, our students have come to me and enriched in these interactions and said, I went to talk to my professor in the office, and my professor is willing to assist me. I had a student that was ready to drop her sociology class, but she worked. I said, you need to go talk to your professor. And the professor told her what the student needed to do to make sure she was going to do okay. I told her, don't withdraw. The professor is working with you. The student came back to me and said, I have passed my class. I am so glad I didn't drop. And the point I'm trying to make to let you guys back in is that the interactions, the communication between faculty and student, it goes both ways. Because let me tell you something, I also call out students when they're completely being insane. And I just tell them, I say, look how you're sitting, because if that's how you're talking to your professor, then we're getting nowhere. So it is very powerful that the interactions between faculty, and we do in EOF try to convey this to the students from the moment that they set foot on summer orientation till the day that we see them graduate, because your work with them really makes our job easier, and then we sort of coincide, so you are a huge part of their academic success, and know that, because that is not coming from me, that's coming from a lot of research that's out there right now. So I just wanted to throw that in.
Thank you, Pam, and I want to add to that too. So I know that what we're discussing seems like a lot of pressure and work on the faculty member. When are we going to have time to have these long conversations? Or maybe that's what the crowd is interpreting me wrong, but I just want to clarify just in case, it does not take much to get through to a student. It really doesn't take much. I mean, like I said at the beginning of this, I'm not saying that faculty should be expected to solve students' problems. Faculty should not be expected to be students' counselors, but a simple acknowledgement, that's you guys. A simple acknowledgement and then a referral to the appropriate campus entity is really, I think, goes a long way. That is to say, avoid shutting down the conversation at all costs. I mean, even if what the student is asking for is something that you can't do, like, do I really have to do my final paper because such and such happened? Faculty should not do that, and I don't think that, counseling certainly would not encourage that, neither would EOF. But even if it's something that you can't do, at least acknowledge what the student is going through and refer them to the appropriate office, because at the end of the day, like I said, faculty have to balance being compassionate with students, but at the same time, upholding the standards of their classrooms is what we need to do. And something as simple as recognizing and referring, empathizing, let a student vent to you for a couple of minutes, and sometimes it can get inappropriate. Just gently listen and then say, maybe I think you need to talk to somebody over counseling. But the idea of shutting down a student is something that we should avoid to be good communicators with them.
A lot of times students don't know what they're asking is inappropriate. So just be mindful of that as well. So when we shut them down, they assume that they did something wrong, but a lot of times it's innocent. They just don't realize that it's inappropriate. You were going to say something.
So I just wanted to add in before, I'm actually an EOF student, and I can honestly say that you've supplied me with so many resources and tools that have allowed me to better understand myself. And I think that recognizing that each student learns differently is really important. I know when I was taking general psychology, I struggled so much with learning the material. Like, I was up all night, and it was just really hard because it's a lot of material. And I actually went to Professor Williford and asked him what techniques and strategies I could use to help me study in a different way, because we do all learn differently. And I think realizing that is really important. And if a student comes, great to just give them different pieces of advice that maybe they can use to apply to their learning and everything. So.
I just wanted to go back to boundaries for a second and expectations. I think it's really important that we model the behavior and call the students out when they push a boundary, because they're going to push it. Some of them, again, are innocent. Some of them are just seeing how far they can get. So it's important that we call them on it and then take the time to explain why we're calling on and what the proper thing to do to get what they want done. So, it's important to call them out. So let's talk about some of the communication real quick. So, perfect. Here we go. So we have a bunch of different styles. We have the social media and what role, if any, should we take in that. We have the emails. We touched on the emails already, and that the emails are being treated as text, whether we like it or not, and how do we respond to that, and excuse the term, lack of phone skills, if they're using the phone at all, and then that immediacy, the need for the instant answer. So, one of the stories I can share, I had a student leader, send an email. It was 2 a.m. because I saw the timestamp, and I show up, walking into the student center at 9 a.m. and they're like, "Well, you didn't respond to my email." And what's the answer? And I'm like, okay, so we talked about what their issue was, and then once they calmed down, I had to pull them aside and say, okay, this is not an appropriate expectation. In our office, we celebrate when we get back to you within 24 hours, let alone in 4 hours in the middle of the night. Exactly. So I don't know if anybody else wants to share a story on some of the styles.
As far as it comes to expectations, in our office, we had a student that came in, non-matriculated, who was looking to register for courses. And he came in, I think, the day before classes began, and actually said to the counselor, "Well, what if I give you $20? And of course, at that point in time, that was a great learning experience for that student. That not only is that inappropriate, that can get you in trouble with the dean of students. So we took that opportunity to help the student grow, and I don't think that he will be doing that again. Just as an example.
No, but I think just like from the beginning of when the semester starts, just setting the guidelines down for the classroom and letting the students know, like you were saying, it may take me this long to respond to an email because, me personally, I know whenever I email Professor, I'm constantly checking my phone, like, why haven't they answered? And it's only been like an hour, that's just, I can vouch for a lot of students, you look for immediate gratification with our technology, so it is really important to let your students know that what your guidelines are and everything.
Well, and that's same for distance learning. I do get you all out of trouble often when they say, they didn't get back to me, I emailed them, what time, 3 a.m., it's 8:30. That's right, they're not going to yet.
I have to add something to that. It's people who email, but they don't bother to check for an answer.
There you go, too.
It happens
Yes.
again, time
Yes.
and
Yes.
time and time
Yes.
and time
Absolutely.
again. It's like a bubble
Yeah,
in the ocean,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
you never go back
Yeah.
to see whether there's an answer.
Exactly, and that's true, and it is funny, because that is one of the things in the information that I provide to students is, to be aware of your syllabus, look at the contact information, how they want to be contacted, again, because you're not standing in front of them telling them, make sure you use this email, or make sure you call this phone number, or whatever. You're counting on them to read that information, and we all know how that ends, oftentimes. So often too, and that's something I will emphasize, is when they do call me looking for that, I will log in with the student and I will go to your class with them and say, you need to reread the welcome here page. Oh, I read it. Read it again. I don't say to them, if you see this, this is what they said. I make them read it with me on the phone. Oh yeah. Is often the response I'll get. So, it's the same holds true again in face-to-face versus distance learning as well. Setting those expectations and being clear on what they are really helps everybody. And, are you going to respond on the weekend or aren't you? That's something you can decide. And letting a student know to not expect a response to you on Saturday night at 10 o'clock is okay. But we need to make that clear. Shelley?
Just really quick, I know I go through this with all the training. One of the things with the Blackboard, the navigation, every single faculty member use Blackboard differently in different capacities. So I always tell faculty members, if they're doing a fully online or hybrid, I very often encourage them to do a screen capture of how and have the students go, and you go through the class and put that video on there for them. And then during face-to-face time, take 10 minutes out and go through the class with them. Everyone uses it so differently. And then when I do the Blackboard training, I do really strongly recommend faculty members to use the information, the instructor information. And in the notes section, this is where I encourage you, please let them know, email is the best way to reach me, but expect it in 24 hours. Again, it helps the students so they're not constantly checking their emails. And I do have faculty members who don't check over the weekend, just let them know that, so they know, and then they don't get so anxious about it.
As far as modeling behavior, social media, some people are going to use it, some people aren't going to use it, and that's okay. One of the tricks I use is I have a Facebook account, a Twitter account that's tied to my CCM account, and then I have a separate one from my personal life. So this way I'm able to interact with the student leaders. It's very helpful in my job because a lot of the promotion for the events happens over social media. So I really can't not be connected to it, but this way there's a separation between the personal and the professional life. So that's, one technique. And then another way we can do is, again, model the behavior for them to teach them the proper way to use these things in a professional setting. So, I talked before about the phone. One of the things we do in our office is we train our student assistants on how to use the phone. We have to call, tell somebody, 50 people that the bus spot pickup has changed, that kind of thing. The students are scared to death to make that phone call, so we write a script, we have them change it, and then they practice with somebody in the office before they call, but now they have a skill that they can use for the rest of their lives. So model that behavior. Some other things on communication, there's the collaboration. The students love collaboration, but they're not so good at practicing it, so they need some guidance there when you're giving them a group project, that kind of thing, on helping them through that process. The inability to make a decision, these students haven't necessarily made too many decisions. I swear sometimes when I say no in my office, it's the first time they've heard that word. So you got to walk them through it. One of the things I'll do when they say no is give them options. It's not just a no, you need to leave. It's a no, but could we? For me, it's programming. So could we change the date of the program, or could we invite a different speaker so we can do it on a day that works for the campus? Those type of things. But give them options, and we kind of touched on the sense of entitlement already.
So there are just a couple of resources we want you to know are available for you to refer to your students.
Sorry, I didn't realize that was my slide. So Campus Life, you can get this right off the Student Life link at the top, and then it has all our resources. So again, if you can try to encourage, if you see a student that might want to get involved on campus, send them to the webpage, send them over to the Student Center, and all the resources on how to get them involved are there. And, again, it's really going to help them be successful. They'll get additional training, and they'll get engaged with the campus, and then they'll be more likely to stay and continue their education.
This is the retention alert page with Professor Hart.
So, and there are many ways that a faculty member, really anybody else, well, this is pretty good faculty, but there are many ways that a faculty member can refer a student to a campus office. One of them is using retention alert. So a faculty can go on to their web advisor and go to the faculty menu. And I know it's hard to see, but if you look over to the right-hand side of the page, the faculty information menu, it's the last one. Retention info, right? So it's the last link that you click on. A field will come up. You can fill in the student's ID number, a short description. That'll be sent to counseling, and then it'll be farmed out to wherever the counseling thinks is most appropriate for that particular student's situation.
And we also recommend that if it's for our office, you can also call too. So you can talk to somebody and you can do a retention alert. Either one is fine. Okay, so we have some on our counseling page on Spider. We have something called a counseling newsletter. I don't know if any of you have seen it. We email to you about once or twice a semester, and that just basically depicts, actually Professor Hart was a star on that newsletter in the fall, and we try to make it relatable to you with different techniques and strategies that may be beneficial. So if you have any ideas, or if you want any more information regarding to a particular topic, please let me know. We also have a community mental health resource packet that's 42 pages worth of resources, from shelters to mental health resources, to LGBTQ resources, to legal services, you name it, it's there. Again, if you want anything added, please let me know. So with that said, here are just a few of the counseling corners that we've had, and we try to make it colorful for the different seasons.
And then again, we've talked about my webpage, which really should look familiar to everybody, but I've just highlighted a couple things. And you know, a lot of the basic questions that students call me, as soon as they call, the first thing I'll say is, have you gone on the website and looked at the resources? And we've kind of lumped them all together, and I highlighted just a couple, but you know, essentially, is distance learning for you? You know, as we talk a lot about retention and student success, as you all know, success in online courses is definitely the buzz that's out there here and nationally, not just at CCM, amongst our colleagues everywhere. But you know, these are resources that I've put together from our colleagues, as well as experiences that we've had, but really to help direct the students. So before they even sign up, is distance learning for them? We encourage them to do the online readiness quiz, which they can do outside of it doesn't have to be part of the CSS course. This is something that's on my website for students to do, and just gives them an idea of where their strengths and weaknesses are, and if you see that and you get a lot of red flags, I'll say to them, did you do it? Oh yeah, it says this and this and this. I said, well, maybe you want to consider just taking a face-to-face or a hybrid. Hybrids are another good option for those students who might be a little scared to dive in or not appropriate to dive in feet first time. Technical requirements, tutorials, everything they need to know is here. I talked earlier about browser issues. One of the things that Blackboard came back with, which I'm going to date myself, the old WebCT days, remember the browser checker? Blackboard came back with that last year, and there's a link to it here on my homepage, but also it's on the login page for Blackboard. It's a link, it's in the letter that they get, that every registered student gets from distance learning. And really, that's a tool to help eliminate the stress for them, so that if they're not sure why something's not working, my first resource to them is always say, do the browser checker. Do you have any red X's? If it's a red X, it tells you that your browser's not supported, your pop-up blockers are or not. What kind of issues you potentially could have. So again, to help reduce their anxiety and spinning their wheels, it's a place they can see right away where I can help them focus, or you can direct them to. So again, all the information's there, the video, the login, but I would encourage you, feel free, please take whatever you want from this and stick it in your supplement shell, put it on your Blackboard course, your online course, hybrid course. It's really meant, there's a lot of thought to goes what's on there, and if you find something that you think it should be there that's not, let me know. I have the power. I talked about the power of the webpage. I have the power. I can change this stuff. Okay, so with that, we're going to turn it over to you for any questions. We have about 15 minutes left, and good job, panel. We timed this perfectly. And I should point out, I am not texting and looking and all that. We have a timer going. So I was the timekeeper for this drill. You're taking notes. There you go. I thought that as you see me keep on refreshing, but we wanted to make sure we took the time. But we're going to start out just by, we as a panel, when we got together and tried to plan all this, at just kind of a thing at our last meeting, I just looked at them and we got to this point. I said, all right, so just tell me, how would you define student success in one word? And everybody went, oh. And I'm like, yeah, but that's why we're here. So let's keep that focus. So we all came up with one word, and my word was, and we're just going to say our word, we're not going to talk about it, we're going to throw it to you, but mine was advocacy. So, yes.
Compassion.
Engaged.
Collaboration.
Involvement.
So we all had a different spin on it, and that just goes to show you just how broad a spectrum, success really falls in. It's not Ariella's job, it's not just the student's job, it's not my job, it's everybody's job in this room to make that happen. And those are just some of the things, again, without us thinking about it, we all just threw out those words. So with that, we open it up to questions or comments or, yes?
Yeah, as I was listening, yes, sometimes when you tell the student, come to my office, they think that they're going to the principal's office. So it applies in terms of speaking to a student and having a desire to refer them to counseling. I'm listening to all of this and I'm thinking to myself, it might be a good idea, and I'm going to throw this out, would it be a good idea, at the beginning of the semester, to actually talk about the counseling center. That it's not a
She's
place
your fantasy.
you go or when something's wrong with you, but it's a place to go to get assistance, not necessarily help per se, but in terms of kind of removing the stigma of would you like to see a counselor?
Thank you so much for that question. She's right, you made my day. Absolutely, there is a lot of stigma when it comes to counseling. But unfortunately, 1 in 4 people are diagnosed with mental illness. Imagine all the people who are not diagnosed. Our belief is that everyone's struggling through something. So whether you're going there to just talk about venting or you're going there to talk about how your parents are divorced, whatever it may be, we are there to support them. And we're trying to let them know that there's nothing wrong with you. You just may need an objective perspective. So we actually do offer our services if you want us in for 5 to 10 minutes just to review our services. So it kind of takes the slack off of you if you would like. If not, we can always give you our brochures. And if you'd like to do the introduction yourself, that's great too. I don't know if you saw in the counseling newsletter, but sometimes we have headlines that say, do you want us to come into your office? We can have a brief overview of our services, or we can do, I know you're limited for time, but we could always do like a half an hour thing on test anxiety or on coping strategies when you're stressed out, things of that nature. So I think, yes, that would be a great idea because a lot of students don't ask.
I just want to say, I know a lot of students that don't know that we have these resources here. And I'm even telling my friends, go to counseling. Like if you're struggling with something, go. They will supply you with the skills and resources necessary. So I think that letting your students know is very valuable and important. And from the beginning and even through the course of the semester, just let them know, like, finals are coming up. If you have test anxiety, go to counseling. It's really important and you find it useful.
Yvonne, I just want to say a couple of things. I think you are right. So students, I think, at some reason are afraid to come to an office hour or to approach a professor. I think this has to do with our authority and how we use it. We need to soften our. We can't give it up. Obviously, we need to maintain it, but we need to make our authority approachable. And one of the ways that you can do this, and I imagine this would work well in an art classroom, it works well in a language classroom, maybe other disciplines are different, but group work, right? Decentralizing the classroom and assigning students something as simple as pair work, group work. The professor goes around and monitors, and that's so easy for you to slip into a conversation, get to know your students, be right there literally in front of their faces. I was reading an Atlantic article that I wanted to mention called Get to Know Your Teacher. And something as simple as, this is what you said, Pam, this is alluded to what you said, something as simple as making a simple, seemingly non-impactful commonality with a student, like wearing a Nirvana t-shirt, right? Saying, oh, Nirvana, that's one of my favorite bands. Studies have shown, this article is talking about something as simple as a connection like that can have a huge impact on how a student perceives you. So something that would open up the conversation with a student later on down the semester, if that student is having a problem, that student is probably now much more likely to come see you with a problem than if you hadn't bent down as you were helping him or her with the assignment and said, Nirvana is a great band, or something like that.
If I could just chime in on that, James, too. My daughter was at a 4-year school, and her favorite professor was the professor that before class started, he always had his playlist going, and it was all her music. And her music isn't Nirvana. It's the old jam bands and Grateful Dead, and because he's like Creedence and this and that, and she's 21. We taught her well. But one of the things that I said that she always talked about was this connection with him, because that was the first thing. It was before class. It was that 10 minutes as people were coming in. He always had music playing. And that was exactly the engagement. That was the start of a fantastic relationship with him, for her, because of just something so simple. I mean, it was just, she could relate. And he wasn't this scary person. He was somebody relatable.
Yeah, faculty shouldn't be friends with students, but relatable to students, I think, is easy to accomplish.
There's a college, just like an example of this approach is, there was a college that the students, I don't know if it was a community college, but they were trying to really assist, our community colleges, the predominant population is first generation, right? We know that parents did not attend college. That's what the bread and butter of this institution. So what this college did was faculty, staff, and everybody in the institution wore t-shirts, right, that said, I am first generation. The impact that had on the student was huge, because the students see their professors as Dr. So-and-so, Professor so-and-so, people that have reached levels of higher education that these students are not even thinking of at this time. So when they actually saw that their professor was also a first generation person, like they were the first ones in their family to go to college, was a huge thing for these students. And it was I think even that their college president wore it or something like that, but I was at a conference that the college spoke of this particular initiative, and the impact that it had was as simply as wearing these t-shirts around. And the students and the faculty and everybody really took pride on their education, and they saw some real interesting connections,
It's a great idea.
Yeah, it was a really cool thing, because so many are first generation, even from an aspect of authority, and that's as simple as that, while you're still holding your levels of accountability, because believe me, students that are held to high standards will reach high standards.
That
And
is
that's
true.
just really the reality
That
of
is
it.
true.
We sometimes underestimate them and think that they can't, but they can.
Yes.
It's just, you just have to do it. And the students will rise to that. And honestly, I see it every year in EOF. And I see these students that we hold them to a standard, they reach the standards, they graduate, they move on, they transfer, and it's just success. So the stuff that they're saying is so valuable to the work that we all do here, because the student retention is not only the role of a counselor or one professor or campus life. It is literally from the cafeteria staff to the president of the college, and that's really the bottom line. If we all can't do it, then they're not going to persist.
Marcia?
I think that what Andrea was saying before about having the professor share even 5 minutes about their lives, I think that's where it can come in very handy, because we're all humans and we all have these stories. So when I usually do my intro to the class, I do share a little bit about me, because I think it's very scary to learn a foreign language, and I was in that in that place exactly that they're in now. So I do share a little bit about my experiences, and I'm also a first generation.
And if I could add for an online class too, put a picture of yourself in there. That's so simple. If you're not comfortable doing an introductory video, which I know not everybody is, that's fine. But a picture, think of when your kids used to go to the food store and see their third grade teacher. They eat, oh my God. Right, with that reaction. And it's the same thing, if they see a picture of you on there, you're no longer just that person clicking on the other end of the computer. You are a person, and put information that you're comfortable with, but just something so simple. I agree with you. I think that's wonderful, and sharing, it does make a difference.
And I think also in terms of, we're not just professors, but we're also advisors. And in some cases, we are only their advisor or only the professor, and in some we're both. And I think that it's very important to talk about their goals and how to reach those goals when they leave here as well. One of the situations that I have never had happened this semester with 2 students actually, who were not too concerned about their grades because they were transferring, so they found out that when they transfer, their grades don't transfer. So I think as an advisor, Part of what I do when I have a chance to talk to my students, or in my class or in my office, is to talk to them about what happens next in terms of enroll, in a college organization, participate, build your resume. They're looking for leaders. They're also looking for people who can work in group environments and collaborate when they when they're trying to find the best candidates. So how do you compete to get that job that you want? So I talk to them about that, and I do tell them the grades may not transfer, but they might go back and look at your associate degrees transcripts. So I do talk to them about what happens next, because sometimes there is a disconnect between what happened before, what's going to happen next. So I don't go into too many specifics, but I do try to guide them and give them a little bit of the beyond. So.
Just want to add in that encouragement really does go a long way. Honestly.
We have one more question. We have time for maybe one or two. We have 5 minutes. Yes, Stu?
Basically, it's for Ariella, but it's for all of you, I assume. I was finishing a class, and a student was at my desk. I had to work with her a little bit more than an essay that she was writing. And the other class came in. And when my student left, I noticed that there was a young man who was right in front of me, sitting right in front of me from the new class, who was reading a textbook. I knew it was an art class, so I asked him how he liked the class. And he said, well, not too much. I said, you don't like art? He said, it's not that. It's a required course, and I have to get over with it. I have to get it through. And we talked a little bit more about something, and he said to me, I just feel so hopeless. Those are the words he used, hopeless. He said, I'm doing all this work, and I know I'm not going to get a job after I finish. Right? So I told him about my experience. When I graduated, it took me 4 years until I got a real decent job. And I told him about counseling. I told him that counseling exists, and maybe he should go see a counselor for some help in this. So a couple of weeks later, I see him again. I didn't see him every time because I leave my classroom, but I was in a little bit. And he sat there, and I said, how'd you do on the test, the midterm? He said, I did all right. And I asked him if he went to see counseling, and he said no. And I said, well, you're feeling a little bit better about things? And whatever I talked about. Now, here's my question. Do I get in touch with you, and do you get in touch with that student? And I didn't even know his name. So do I ask him? I mean, if it's my student, I know the name, and I could speak to you. But am I supposed to ask him, well, what's your name? So I could refer you to counseling, counseling get in touch with you.
Well, that's a good question. You can ask him if he's interested in you referring him, and then you can set up a retention alert and he can give you his information. Another option is you can say, I'm taking a walk by, if you have time, I'm taking a walk by counseling. Do you want to take a walk with me just so you can see what it looks like? Even having our brochure on hand with you, it talks about career exploration in there too. It's not just the counseling piece, because the office is called Counseling and Student Success. So there are a lot of different resources that we offer in there. And we have no problem even coming to the classroom. That wouldn't be appropriate in that case, but if you had a student that was having difficulty, we have gone into the classroom to assist as well.
One more question, I think?
I just had a question about, you talked about the social media and the cell phones. What is the most appropriate way when you feel that these cell phones are out, and especially in a smaller class? I mean, I had this problem last semester, and do you call that student out? What's the etiquette, with the cell phones, especially when you have our generation that, I mean, even when we're in school now, I mean, the cell phone's gone. What is the best way from a professor's standpoint to handle some of this that we're not accustomed to?
Yes, well, the first thing is set the expectation very early in the semester in your syllabus. Go over your syllabus, point out very specifically that no cell phones are allowed in the classroom. And then when you see that behavior that's undesired appear, take the student aside before or after class, explain that you've noticed this behavior, remind the student of the expectation, and ask that it stop. And if it continues, Well, first of all, if it stops, you should encourage the good behavior. So I noticed we had the conversation last week. I told you not to use the cell phone. I didn't see it out this time. Thank you very much. Can we please continue to keep it away? So you're reinforcing the good behavior. But if it continues to occur and continues to occur, I mean, at that point, I would just escalate it and say, look, this is now the 5th or 6th time I've asked you to put your cell phone away. It's distraction to the classroom. Always give some kind of rationale. I'm not picking on you. This is the expectation of the classroom. I am supposed to give the expectation. I put it there not to punish people. I put it there because I feel I need everybody's attention for the learning to occur. So always give good kind of rationale that's rooted, takes it away from the person. This is not a personal issue, right? This is an expectation that's there because it's for good learning, it's for your sake. Always when you have the authority, make it seem, because it really is, that rules are in place for the good of the community and for the good of the student. And once that happens, I think that probably would stop. But at some point, you just got to kick the student out. I mean, if it's halfway through the semester, I'm sorry, I mean, that doesn't work and you're not getting through, then out. I mean, at that point, you got to just, but I want to say one quick thing that I think is really important. All of this holistic approach, I think it's extraordinarily important, not just for the success of the student, but I also think this is something that the faculty should embrace. If we see ourselves as nothing more than vehicle information delivery devices, right, then that is the reason that an administration needs to say, well, then why, if you're just a vehicle information delivery device, right, then what do we need you really for? Why can't we just put something or somebody else there like an adjunct or like some kind of computer system or something? I mean, this is really this compassion. Computers cannot be compassionate.
Can I really respond to the cell phone really quick?
Yes,
Because I have a completely different approach when I teach. I actually have my students bring their own device. So if I do teach, I have them on their cell phone face down on the desk. And the way I teach, I have a little bit of a controlled chaos in my class. So very often they're not supposed to, it's just the physical presence of me kind of just walking toward them, maybe tapping very subtle. Because for me, having that cell phone, it's pretty cool because if there's something I don't know or something I want them to look, it's like, Google it. Let's figure this out. And so for me, so again, I think it's very faculty dependent. It's very much comfort level of each faculty members. But again, I think setting the expectation right up front is very critical. So again, just from a very different approach from no cell phone to for me, where I'm like, we'll take it out.
And I agree, you can. So I was at a presentation recently,
Yeah.
and I thought it was a really neat use of a cell phone. I haven't fleshed this idea out, so I'm just throwing it out there as a brand new idea that I had just come up with. I was at a presentation, and the audience could tweet their questions.
Yep.
And the presenter would then look at the Twitter account and respond to students' questions that they tweeted.
Yep.
So there are academic ways that you can incorporate devices. So thank you for that, Shelley. So I don't do that in my classroom, and it is faculty dependent. But there's the other approach, which is instead of fight it, see if you can integrate it. And I'm sorry, there are a couple.
Yeah, I have in my syllabus that you cannot use your cell phone except when it's a group activity. And there have been times where it's important to have the students to have their cell phones out. And so I think that helps to balance it out because there isn't a week that goes by that there isn't, say, an hour or so in a 4.5-hour class where it becomes a group activity in order to get certain individuals.
Well, and one of the things, we're all recruited by Don to do student tours and for new student orientation, and that's one of the things we always talk about is it's at the prerogative of the individual professor. And, to put it on your syllabus becomes a point that, it's out there, it's clear, there's no discussion. To mention something, maybe they weren't in class that day. And the other thing is, we do have non-traditional students who have childcare issues or school's closed or snow or whatever, and we will suggest to them as part of that, if you are expecting an important phone call, we all have that. There are times when you just have to take that call. Let your professor know ahead of time, I don't mean to be disruptive. Again, it's that mutual respect. I don't mean to be disruptive during class, but I'm expecting this important call, and they may or may not share what's going on. And but to have that again goes back to that whole engagement and relational relationship that you have with the student, because then it's like, you know what? They may have been scared to tell you, but they do, and that, you know, kind of just comes full circle then, so.
And just going back, I think that there's some scenarios where students will be on their cell phones, and yeah, some professors may say from the beginning, if you're on your cell phone, that's going to impact your grade, and then they just don't say anything the rest of the semester. And if they're on their phone, then it's going to impact the grade. But I mean, for example, there's this one girl in my class who I sit next to, we're in the front row, and she will sit there and text the entire time. And the professor just won't say anything, and I don't think she realizes that she's being disrespectful. So I think that when professors do tell them, you know, you're on your phone, please put it away, then, because in high school, that's just what a lot of students would do, they'd just be on their phone, so just pointing it out really does go a long way.
We have time for, I think, one more comment. We've kind of gone over that.
Yeah, it's just just a little carry over from what James was talking about. And I think for an effective cell phone policy, the students in the classroom have to buy into the idea. And I try to explain that it's not some kind of capricious, you know, requirement that you have put in your syllabus, but that it has a very negative impact on you. And I said that there has been a study already that came out about the impact of devices like tablets and laptops and phones, their impact on student success, and not only the student using it, but the students around it. And they have found out that they are big distractors and they do impact negatively everybody. And so that is a very important factor, because I want the rest of the class not only to understand my policy, but also to contribute to supporting that
Well, the
policy.
student next to Andrea, because you're distracted
Yeah.
to her, and now your learning is impacted, so that's.
And that's a very important point.
Absolutely.
It's distracting to the teacher, because when I kept
Oh, yeah.
seeing her, I was really challenged with, I'm distracted by what, and I could tell she wasn't looking up stuff.
Right.
You know, and you're challenged with, now it's taking away from me,
Right.
because I'm now focused on that, and I'm toyed with, do I tap her on the shoulder, do I embarrass her,
Right.
oh, you know, what do I do? It really does affect all the learning outcomes.
Exactly. So, well, thank you all so much for
Thank you.
coming today, and